So, I think I didn't disappoint when I said that there might be some swear words. I think that might be the reason why that email didn't go through as well. I also didn't fail to notice that you not only mentioned one, but both World Wars. So I thank you for that. I mean, there's been quite some thought-provoking points being made by both of you. Oh, all three of you, sorry. It helps if I can count. Are there any questions from the audience to kick us off? No? Are you all shocked? Shocked by Miles' swearing? There's one here at the front. Quick, quick.
Hi there. Carl Ward, Chichester College. It's an envisioning question. Interested in Project Spark, the ability for kids to create, and develop their own stuff. But going back to what was the previous topics, how do you envisage getting girls into that environment as well as boys?
Well, Project Spark's a great example of that, actually. Excuse me. And there's lots of conversation, because Project Spark is it's kind of gender neutral. You can create it in any way or shape that you want. And what we see happening is some very interesting examples, girls really engaging with that technology because it is so open and it is so accessible. It's not, Minecraft. It's a different place. So you can express any kind of creativity that you want to. And I'm trying to avoid any gender stereotyping here, but it is completely malleable. So there's no reason why girls or boys shouldn't engage with it. I think the challenge, though, is, and maybe this is part of your question, is, encouraging people to get into gaming, per se, as well. Young kids to get into gaming and gaming for the right reasons. I think the sort of accessibility of games is really helping that, move forward. But I'd like to see that go a bit further forward. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is how do you get them there is the key part. Yeah, I mean, I think casual gaming has done a lot for that, right? Yeah, and mobile gaming, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, mobile, whatever, and casual gaming, to me, it's the sort of the level of game that anybody can pick up. And I think if you look at what Nintendo did with the Wii, what we've done with Kinect, is we've really tried to open that up. And yeah, we've got a core group of gamers who are male and of a certain age demographic and like blowing things up. But actually, we see lots of families playing together, all sorts of games. And the more stuff we do like that, and again, I'm just back to creativity, I think the better. Yeah, I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and I want her to play Minecraft, things like that, because it's a different... Well, there was a lovely thread on the Project Spark community board about a dad who'd got a boy and a girl, and just basically relaying the different experience that they both had and how they'd created two entirely different worlds, but they both loved it. And the sort of son got into one element of it, the daughter got into another, and it was, for me, it's just a great hallmark that we see that actually, it's accessible and it is ultimately about creativity. Thank you.
Good. There was a question at the back, I think. Some hand. Oh, here, front.
Hi, can you hear me? Can
Martin?
you hear me? Oh, that's Martin. Martin King in Hammersmith and West London College. I noticed that you've taken the fire away this year, Frank, but you've turned up the heat.
It's hot enough here, believe me.
But I noticed that, was it Bethany? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Miles followed on from each other and had very different views of the future of technology and education. And, well, the way I saw it anyway, that I was just going to ask, what do you think will be the way that it will move forward? I know that Miles was saying the lizards are still in charge, but Bethany was saying there's a creative, the maker creative side, and obviously Miles was talking about the same old in a way. How do you? That's the way I interpreted it. Anyway, how do you think the future is going to unfold? Will it be any different, or will the rise of the machines be just the same as it's always been?
I mean, I don't totally agree. I think that Miles kind of ended on a note which was very much aligned with what we are talking about, which is that the way things have been is not necessarily the way they need to be, and that the more active we are in creating and participating and challenging that future, the better. And in our case, we're doing that through kits and gadgets and processes and methods that are going to hopefully help education change from the outside in and the inside out. Both from a learning outcome perspective, it's not necessarily going to solve the IT problems of an entire school or an entire council, but I do think it might change the way we understand how learning happens, which can have a huge effect on the way things happen within any kind of organization. So I don't know if we were so far apart as far as he was setting a context of what has been and criticizing that for potentially something different. That is at least how I interpreted it.
Oh, okay, Miles, it's just, maybe I'm just...
Maybe I'm just really
putting a divide
optimistic,
with it.
possibly.
No, I do remember, like Miles, I do remember playing with Papal's turtles back in the, was it late 70s? And whatever happened to them, and, you know, I've seen these cycles go and come, you know, hopefully your one will progress and we'll get somewhere.
I mean, I think, you know, it's funny, isn't it? It's a Future of Education conference, and I'm finally talking about the future of education. I think we have a tendency, I think, with technology to both underestimate its capacity for change, but also overstate what is in front of us. And so we adopt these grand, maybe it's just me, you know, but we adopt these grand narratives. I mean, one of my favorite grand narratives is, you know, is this, the internet will kind of spread democracy around the world. I mean, it's manifestly bollocks, you know. I mean, half the world has essentially walled garden internets. I mean, in China, you know, the e-commerce in China was worth £45 billion in the first quarter of this year. And that's in an internet that apparently, you know, we would be led to believe, an internet that somehow is non-functional because they can't get on Twitter. So, but at the same time, clearly, and I mean, this has really been the theme of this panel, clearly things need to change in education because the world of work is changing. And I hate saying this because I think people should go into education because they love it, not because they want to get a well-paid job in the banking sector. But you know, the world of work is changing. The world is becoming global. Communication has altered the way trade is done, the way investment is made, the kind of skills that people need. And you know, ironically, a city like London thrives, you know, because it was an ancient entrepot and is now a kind of modern, diverse city. And that's one of the key skills for the future, is being able to work in diversity. So we do need to make changes. But we don't want to get distracted too much by the very big, you know, computers will transform everything and set you free and all of that rubbish, because that distracts us from the very, very real work. And I mean, very interesting that you know, the user-centered design work, if you like, of actually making the change happen.
Hi, my name is Huma. I'm from the Ministry of Change. And I have this confusion in my own mind of, and I don't know how to put this straight. You know how big companies make loads of money, and then later on they want to give it away to solve the world's problems. But had they not made that money that quickly, maybe some of the problems wouldn't be there. Similarly, when technology comes in and resolves these issues, but then creates these issues and then wants to resolve the issues that they created, how do we deal with those kind of things? Because we are in a world where we cannot go and become a guru on some mountain. We have to deal with technology and try to get the positives. But then a lot of times, the way it's manufactured, the way the company giants have become giants and they're going to be hoarding our data, they inevitably will be creating more of the problems that exist. So how do you work that out in your own minds? Because I'm extremely confused about it.
Dave, speaking of big
It's all my fault,
corporations.
apparently. Look, I can only answer that on a personal basis, and it's not a cop-out. I mean, tell you, the reason I do the job I do and I love what I do is I think it's crucially important to paint what I call openly a naively optimistic view of the potential of technology in our society. And let's understand the true potential of what it can deliver. No, we're never going to get to that full extent, but at least we've got some context now as to what we're doing. Right? And then once we know what's possible, we can then start to have the discussions about what's the best way to do it, how do we equip our society, where are the barriers going to be. And what I worry about in conversations, a bit like this, but certainly we have it a lot in the media, is we never start from that naively optimistic view. We start from a negative view from the beginning. It's all crap, it's all changing everything, so what are we not, you know. And the only place you end up there is you turn it all off. Well, I'm not sure that's the right answer either. So what I'd rather do is understand the potential, and then as a society, and privacy and data is a classic one for this, I would love a really open dialogue about what privacy should mean to our society, about what we should be able to do. I think the way that we go around using data today is kind of the wrong way around, certainly when it comes to things like advertising. You know, the data gets harvested, assumptions get made about who you are, and you see ads. You have no part of that conversation. Well, that's wrong. You should have a part in that conversation. But we've got to get legislation, we've got to get regulation, we've got to get consumers like you, you've got to get tech companies like us, all part of that dialogue to try and get us to the right place. Because the bad thing for me is if we end up in a place where nobody trusts technology, nobody likes it, we miss out on all of the gift. And that's how I get out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that sort of keeps me sane and keeps me engaged, because I want us to have these difficult conversations, because then we can get to the right outcome.
And I think our entire business, sorry.
Thank you.
I mean, I think our business is based on everything you just said, basically. The name of our business is provocative intentionally because we don't think it's going to save us. We think we're going to save ourselves, but we're not going to do that unless we understand it more and are capable of actually playing with it, hacking it, modifying it, getting closer to it. Our entire ethos around creating products that help people understand complex things in hands-on ways is completely about the fact that we don't know the solutions to these challenges. Introducing a wearable kit into a classroom environment about data is going to be really, really exciting and really terrifying. How do we make sure that that's being introduced in a way that is personal enough, interesting enough, actually has learning outcomes that are relevant, but still really kind of tackles that edge of the complexity of data and the fact that we actually don't get it. We're not saying we're solving this. We're just saying we'd like to be a part of helping people, teachers, families get closer to it, to make better decisions, understand it in different ways, because being like this with it, you don't understand it. And to your point, big businesses aren't inviting us in to do that necessarily, but I think a lot of businesses are now shifting because of small businesses like us and many others that are challenging that kind of norm. So I think it's a great question. I think that is the basis for why we're all doing what we're doing, I think.
I think, it's a great question, but it's a very difficult question. I mean, personally, how do I deal with it? By enjoying time with my family and by helping young people get involved with technology. That's my, in a way, not think about the sort of awful mess that we seem to be perpetually creating for ourselves. We cause problems so that we can solve them. I think in terms of social action, I think we have to get quite a lot smarter about the technology narrative, as a society. And this is about, it's about very boring things, but it's about critical thinking, it's about civics, it's about science education, all of those things that we kind of harp on about that are really important. Well, actually, guess what? They really are important, because we have really immature discussions about privacy, for example. Really immature, and it's a serious issue. But look at the technology industry absolutely taking the piss out of our privacy. Do you remember those Google engineers in high dudgeon that the NSA had been intercepting their inter-site links? That they've been sending unencrypted over dark fiber. Well, do you think they sent their business information unencrypted over dark fiber? I don't think so. They just sent personal data. So, we don't, these are really important discussions that we need to have. And I guess it's kind of, the tech thinkers, we need to be leading some of those discussions and rolling our sleeves up and doing a little bit of activism. Instead of, that conversation that you get after the one drink too many in an e-learning conference is the, oh God, the bloody academics, they just don't get e-learning. We need to get beyond that and say, well, why don't they get it? And what can we do to help?
Can I just jump in, because you mentioned skills been mentioned a couple of times, and I think what do you think are the skills you mentioned in your talk? And I remember in a talk 2 years ago, I believe, and maybe my memory tricks me, I think you brought an example of people relying too much on technology and someone following GPS and driving, Yeah. And it's that sort of thing where I personally think, duh. Yeah. But is that a lack of critical thinking, too much reliance on technology that it does everything? and what are the skills that, you know, kids these days or students or teenagers need to?
So I think there's a number of levels there, Frank. So one is I do think critical thinking is at the heart of this. You know, one of the things I worry about a lot at the moment, and it's completely anecdotal, right? But you may have experienced this in your own personal lives. But I've noticed it's really hard to find an individual unique opinion these days. And I know that's a generalisation, but the Scottish referendum was classic. You go down the pub and you start talking to people about the Scottish referendum, and all you would hear is whatever that individual had last seen on Facebook being replayed. And well, where's the thought? And part of this, and we focused a lot on this in the second book, part of the problem is we spend so long in front of a screen just snacking on information, and we've become quite accustomed to it now. So we just consume more and more information, but we never leave ourselves time to digest it and form our own opinion. And so on top of critical thinking, I think this concept of deep thinking, the ability to take a step back and analyse it, that's crucial too. And I do worry that we lose that out because we're not making those positive, mindful choices about technology. How many of us, you know, sit in front of Coronation Street and when it's a bit crap, you know, I'll just pick up my phone and my tablet and I'll start messing around on Facebook. Well, at that point, I'm neither engaged with the TV nor the laptop. I've just sleptwalked into the experience. That's a bad place to be. We should be making positive, conscious choices. And those are the things for me that I think are crucial for us.
Bethany, what are you?
I mean, I think for us that there's another dimension to it, which is about how you think differently through making, and that inherently your questions, the understanding which you think you know, or the challenge which you think you're solving, changes through the making, prototyping, iteration process. And I think that's a fundamental part of the shifts we're seeing in both education practice, but also in young people learning these skills, which they are supposed to be learning, apparently. And that it isn't just about the skill, it's about the process of getting to that skill. And I mentioned it a bit in our talk, but lots of people that are using technology know that the critical thinking, the problem solving, the debugging is the skills that you're taking beyond the actual programming capacity you have. And we completely agree that the skills that are needed in the future, we don't even know what those are. The jobs that young people will have in the future, they're going to be hybrids of things we don't even imagine. And we'd like to be a part of preparing teachers, young people, and families for this, what we hope is a quite optimistic future that includes these kind of technologies, hardware, software, making, problem-solving, critical thinking, but in an optimistic, imaginative way. Because there is a negative side of it. There just is. But we have decided as an organization that we're going to be on the optimistic side of it, because the other part is just depressing to me, quite frankly. Yeah. And I have a choice. Our employees have made a choice, and we hope that we can have more people feel a little bit more optimistic. Yeah.
I veered slightly off a tangent, but I mean, really responding to what the other two panelists have said, that you know, there's this sort of thing of you get. There was a revolution a while back, wasn't there, or what was sold as a revolution in 2009 in Iran, which apparently Twitter was sort of instrumental in. And I think, I mean, that's a very appealing thing, isn't it? Oh, Twitter revolution, you know, oh, look at all of the changes bringing about. But I mean, it's rubbish. I mean, you know, Iran still has the same oppressive dictatorship, and no doubt that the secret police rounded up a few well-known Twitter users and, you know, shot them. What's missing from that, and this is often missing from our kind of half-hearted engagement with technology, is organisation and activism. I mean, those are the crucial. I mean, that's why what Bethany is doing is great, really, isn't it? Because it's actually tangible, physical. It's automatic. It's built-in activism, and why a platform like Spark is also great, because you actually, I mean, you can't consume it. You have to do it. Yeah. And I think that's really the answer, is that somewhere through that, it's the doing, it's the organising and finding people. There are people who are naturally organisers, I guess, in every society. And you know, doing stuff is the way forward. That's what stops the sort of, you know, following the GPS off the cliff moment.
We've got a question here.
Hi. I know a lot has been said about the younger generation using Minecraft and upcoming Project Spark and so on. My concern at the moment is the middle generation of people that are consuming media that are no longer at school, so aren't benefiting from the new curriculum, for example, who have picked up a lot of bad habits and are using, they're using technology, but they're not necessarily using it the right way. And they're now passing on those bad habits to their own children at home. I know the schools are obviously going to be trying to improve certain aspects of it in school, but I think there's a lot at home that they're going to be learning from, and I think that's a huge concern. The older generation, that sort of generation as well, that are already in the workforce, they're going to find their jobs are changing, and they're not likely to be, they're missing out, basically. They're missing out on being educated on best practices. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that, how to educate that workforce that's already there.
Well, I mean, you know, it's exactly what we're trying to do at the moment. That's why I wrote a book called The Rise of the Humans, which is to provoke everybody, all of you, and me, you know, our technology habits. We've got to really think about what we're doing. You know, I caught myself, and I've written a bloody book on this stuff, right? And I caught myself over the weekend bollocking my son. You know, I've got my phone in my hand, and I'm like, you're always on a bloody screen, you're always on a bloody... Hang on a minute, just let me finish this. You know, and it's just like, come on. He sees that, and he's going to inherit it. So this is about, you know, you all have the ability to influence not just your family, but your friends around you, your colleagues, to make those mindful choices. And this is where it starts, right? We've got to reclaim back some humanity, get technology to its rightful place, right? Which is to be this transformational force. But it takes us to use that. And we've all got to wake up to do that. I mean, and so really that's the move that we're trying to get to, is to get people to really see that.
I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to know how much of a bubble we're in because we're so close to what we're doing. But the thing that's really interesting from what we see is that there's a kind of groundswell of what we would call kind of lifelong learning, kind of opportunities, whether that's kits that are, you know, purchasable, you can do them at home, etc., whether that's MOOCs that are online, whether that's workshops that are affordable, short-term, intensive activities. I think there are beginning to be more options and more potential for people to learn forever, as opposed to it being condensed into a school setting or a university setting. And I do think it's happening from startups and businesses that are seeing needs and opportunities to create new ways to engage with learning and education based on things that are changing fast, like technology, and providing opportunities that are interesting, that are taught by practitioners in the field, not just education experts, et cetera. And I think, yeah, I think there's a groundswell of that happening. We see a lot of them in our kind of area, but again, it's hard for me to tell sometimes how much is just our little bubble versus a wider bubble. But some of the businesses we've heard of or work with, like FutureLearn, General Assembly, these are providing real opportunity for quick, intensive and interesting re-engagement with skills and relationships with technology, which is pretty exciting. And it's not just technology, quite frankly. It's just skills in general. So yeah, I think that's something that we see growing a significant amount. Thanks.
I think I get what you're saying, but I'd start by questioning part of the premise, which is that there is a right and a wrong way to use technology. I don't think that's true. People use technology the way they use technology. If you don't like it, well, you know, fuck you. Sorry. It's as simple as that. I mean, we don't get to set the rule. And I mean, in education, I think it's particularly important that we learn that we have some influence, but we don't have a final say. I think the other aspect of this is in terms of its impact on you know, people like me, this aging generation, and you know, who doesn't quite know how to use a slideshow clicker correctly. Then it's really, I mean, I have to say, it's a kind of class thing. I know I'm British, I'm going to say that, but I mean, it's to do with socioeconomic status, isn't it? Your average C-suite exec can be clueless with a computer, and that's fine. I mean, because their key skills is a tan and golf. The people, the sort of middle-aged, middle manager types, I mean, they will have to learn. You know, I mean, I know someone very well, middle-aged, middle manager type, who has something like 3 trillion emails in their inbox. And, you know, eventually, they're going to fill their mailbox up entirely. Their IT department won't keep increasing it. And they're going to have to learn how to manage their email. And that, you know, it just is. There you go, I've contradicted myself in one paragraph. But the people who are really hard hit, I think, are people whose jobs in the past where they had mastery. I mean, this is the thing about, being mid-career. You have mastery. And you no longer do, because you're now the clueless fuckwit who can't use the computer that is an essential part of your job. And I mean, that's a really, really difficult thing. And it hasn't just hit people low on the socio-economic scale who've been displaced from factories by robots. But of course, it's moving up all the time as casework support systems and data mining systems become more relevant to jobs that were traditionally essentially just clerical or administrative. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I feel sure that compassion for those people who are being displaced is important, and that we have to accept, I guess, that there will be some people who will never rediscover that mastery that they enjoyed. And I mean, I think there's a genuine problem there. And I think it's something, as a society we have to pay attention to. But I think it's part of a much wider problem of the future of work. I mean, in a world where less work needs to be done by people, then what do we do with all of the people?
Just on an optimistic note, just because actually this is a world that we're in this startup world. It's so optimistic. There are so many interesting, ambitious entrepreneurs trying to solve all kinds of problems. And I really do believe that that's a really exciting part of what's happening, not just in education, in general, in the world. There are tons of businesses starting online platforms which are trying to highlight craftsmen, local manufacturing, organizations that otherwise didn't have supply chains to sell products. I mean, the world that we see in this startup bubble, which is no longer going to be startup occasionally or eventually, is going to create more problems, solve some of them, but create new opportunities for something very different than what we see as the existence that we have today. And I think that's really quite exciting. And again, maybe that's a bubble that we are in, but it's happening. And London is very much a part of that. It's pretty exciting what's happening around kind of startups and new businesses trying to challenge and help different people and organizations in very different ways. So, sorry, just as a
question at the back.
Hi, I'm Dan, and I work for a company called Emerge Education, which is about trying to get more startups to innovate within education. I think talking about mindfulness and talking about the requirement for critical thinking, I think there's a sort of further step which is about building reflective practices into the educational ecosystem, about trying to get people to understand their values and what purpose they want to have and this sort of thing. It's a space at the moment that I can see that is not filled at all with any technology that can help do that. And I was wondering if you have any idea of that, of a technology that could help reflective practices and reflection, so that we're not in this cycle of sort of creating, disrupting, and then realizing that disruption wasn't great, and so trying to recreate. I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
So, I mean, for our organization, we're thinking about that a lot. We're creating tools specifically that we're kind of experimenting with now around kind of learning journals and reflective practice that happens after workshops, or that encourages families and teachers and anyone making the products or the kind of kits to really reflect on the learning and kind of share that in kind of open platforms. I think for me, it's about kind of stages of where the kind of education world seems to be as far as technology. And I think as a startup, I can only speak from ourselves, there's a lot of stuff we want to solve, but it's about focusing and figuring out where our efforts can best be placed, so that we can then evolve and really address all the gaps and the challenges that we see in our own work, and also that we might see in the broader context. So that's kind of from our perspective. And to answer your question, I don't know of any that are doing that necessarily, but it might be the immaturity of the sector potentially, and that as organizations evolve, so we work really closely with Code Club, Code Academy, Apps for Good, amazing organizations are inspiring young people, facilitators, teachers to really engage in these practices in what I would argue mindful ways. They're not using that word, but they are mindful ways. I think it's going to be a kind of combination of us building tools together that we share that help all of us do that better. At least that's what I hope. Because I don't think it makes sense for any of us to do it and then not share it, because we're all trying to get to the same end goal, pretty much.
Great. I mean, we're literally bang on time, and I'd like to end on a positive note. No offense to Miles there. If you could give a big round of applause to our speakers and panelists.